to the newest episode of Borderline Podcast Disorder. It's literally morning. I'm recording this for the first time as I'm about to just release it because of the busyness of life in the past week. Actually, past 2 weeks, because even last week, um, I had to make like a lot of adjustments in regards to the schedule of the podcast, but I wouldn't do it any other way. Um, and yeah, I woke up at 4 in the morning to be able to do this before I get cracking with the work for today. As I record on a Tuesday, I'm interviewing two other people for some episodes that are gonna drop out in a couple of weeks, and I'm I'm tired, but I'm also very happy. I did say that there are some wonderful news that I will be able to share with everyone. I can't share it just yet, but will do very soon, hopefully. But then, yeah, because of that and because of my, other bits of work, I've just been running around a lot. And don't forget, for everyone listening that is from London, I've got a show coming up on Friday, the 19th of September, at the Camden Comedy Club. And I've got another show at the same venue coming up in October. The date is on my website. I think I want to say the 6th, but I can't remember precisely. But it's on the website and it's on my social media. Um, but this week's guest is one of my favorite comics and one of my favorite people. It's I'm very grateful to have spoken with Nathan many times, and I've always found our conversations so valuable because he's not only just a knowledgeable person, but he's a lovely human being, and he's been super kind to give me some of his time to record this episode as well. And look, folks, I hope you enjoy it. And sorry, I'm getting a bit distracted because Sarma and Pickle keep running around at 5 a.m. And, usually I'm in bed. Uh, Absolutely, like nothing can wake me up. But now because I'm up, I just keep, actually get distracted by that. And don't know if you heard that. That's them. Anyway, enjoy the episode with Nathan, and I'll catch you before we wrap it up. Okay, so Nathan, how's it going?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm very good. So nice to see you. Always a pleasure.
Pleasure's all mine.
Thank you. Well, how what's it been like? Because we were recording at the beginning of September. You've had a busy summer, I imagine.
Very busy. Yeah, I've what is it? A week or so after the Edinburgh Fringe. I'm doing some personal training sessions. I'm absolutely knackered. I'm trying to get my body looking a bit better for a secret reason. So I've done a couple of PT sessions, and my body feels like it does when I play 10-pin bowling every 3 years, which is I'm using muscles that I just never use, just broken. But I talked to the PT today, and he said, I said, my body's broken. And he said, it's like alcohol, man. If you got a hangover, you got to keep drinking. I'm like, all right, man, I'll bring a beer next time I come.
That's a good. I don't know how efficient that analogy is.
I think it is. I felt broken before I did the session, and afterwards I feel better. So yeah, I haven't really
That's
worked my body like this for a few. So yeah, the Fringe was intense and very busy this year, more than ever probably. So it feels good to relax.
When you, because you're talking about relaxing, and that's even before we talk about the fringe in more details. How do you define relaxation? Because now it sounds like you're relaxing by having PT classes, trying to get a shave for a secret project, which sounds cool. But then again, is that a part? Is that a part of your relaxation routine, or how would you define?
Well, this is it. Good question, because relaxation compared to the fringe for me. I mean, I, d- I was going to say I find it hard to relax. I don't find it hard to relax, but when I'm at work, I'm at work and I'm at work constantly. I'm kind of always on at my son about this in terms of, because he's a musician. I'm just like, you work solidly. I just work solidly, and certainly did during the fringe. So I was saying this to someone yesterday that, yeah, relaxation for me is being able to take half an hour or an hour off, or more kind of a state of mind where there's no pressure on you or no deadline to do something today. So even though you're working solidly, there's no, I've got to be there at that time. I've got to do this gig. I've got to do these two gigs, these two shows, or whatever. So yeah, relaxation in the mind for sure. If not, taking a break. If I take a break, I need to do nothing. So I do that a few times a year, and I just go away. And so I can relaxing isn't hard, but I need to be like in New Zealand, South Island, and just with no access to anything. Because as soon as there's access to a phone, I'm like, oh, I wonder whether this is happening, you know? So yeah, I'm going to end up on a mountain in New Zealand in about 20 years' time, just doing nothing. So I may as well work hard while I'm here.
I mean, that's again, it sounds like a good plan. Although, wait, actually, you know what I was going to ask you as well as out of curiosity, do you have that? Because I've heard it before from other people, where it's kind of like the relaxation would be even the idea of, like, switching your, I want to say, worry for a while, because now, say again, you've been like full on fringe, and now the fact that that's done and you don't have to think about it that much, even the fact that, again, basically you still work, but because you work on something else.
Mm.
I've heard the theory that some people find that also quite, relaxing, and I guess refreshing more than relaxing, maybe.
Yeah, well, in terms of worry, I very rarely worry about work. There was maybe one thing in Edinburgh that was slightly concerning, but I never really worry. I never really get stressed. I'm a bit odd to that extent, I think, in terms of a stand up. But yeah, I've got kids, so I worry about them. I don't really worry about work or get stressed with work. So even though I'm very busy, people sometimes say, "Oh, you're busy, Nathan. You need to calm down. You're too stressed." I'm like, "Well, I'm not stressed, am I? I'm just busy." So I'm not. I'm enjoying it. I am enjoying it. I mean, there was a lot of admin in Edinburgh, but I enjoy going back to kind of working solidly. I do. I have explored it in various thoughts in my own podcast, and I'm constantly exploring why I'm like this, why I'm and we may have talked about it previously, but like death is a big motivator for me, and kind of the thought that I'm going to die is on my mind maybe once a day or once every couple of days, and that's kind of I've got to work hard. I've got to make my mark on the world before it's too late. Or so yeah. So I don't I don't worry about it. I just want to work hard and make my mark and make a difference and all these kind of things, and have fun. Have as much fun as possible. It's what Ricky Gervais says. You got one moment in time. You've been dead for billions of years, and you got this one moment for 70, 80 years, then you're going to be dead for another billion years. So you may as well enjoy it. You may as well work as hard as possible. You may as well get as much out of it as possible. So that's me. But it is slightly to the detriment sometimes of just chilling out and having fun. I did that a couple of times in Edinburgh, and I'm like, I kind of want to be doing this more, but then I wouldn't be able to achieve what I do. So it's maybe I need to strike a better balancing act next Edinburgh for sure, I think.
But you see now, okay, let's delve into your Edinburgh experience, because and before we go into the actual fringe experience, we're talking about like the pre Edinburgh. So you went. Is it? Have you been before with like multiple shows at Edinburgh, or was this the first year?
No, I've always done multiple shows, but in the past there'd be one solo and one mixed bill. So I did the Rat Pack stand up comedy for many years as kind of a second show. But for the last, I don't know, certainly 3 years, 3 or 4 years, I've done two shows. So two solo shows as a minimum. So I do that because I feel like one show isn't really enough to fill my day. It also doubles my money on the free festival. If I did two shows on the paid fringe, it would double my losses. So I wouldn't want to do that. Yeah, so it was the two shows and running the Ish Awards as well. So I've done that for the last 3 years. I've done the Ish Awards and done two solo shows. So that's why it's been so busy.
And you've done because obviously I know I've seen Piracy, which I love. I've seen one of
It's out on
the.
YouTube. Out on YouTube now.
Is it already out?
Right from the Bill Murray. It's already out. It's just out last week. Yeah.
Wow, that's fast. Because I thought you've only recorded it last week, didn't you?
No, I recorded it in March. So it was a rare show that came together. So you saw it, I think, on its first outing. And I remember you saying something to me which sticks with me now. And people people forget, I think, like if you love something, tell someone, because it really does stick with the artist. And you said that's like one of the best shows I've ever seen. And I thought, wow, because you may not remember saying that, but that's how I remember the event. You may think I didn't say that at all, but yeah, I mean and that was the first outing of it. So I thought it came together really quickly. So I don't know. I think that was just before the turn of the year. So I recorded it in March at the Bill Murray, and yeah, that's really early for me, and it came together really quickly. So that's the recording that's out on. So I record my other show soon on. Yeah, at the end of September. So it's not the end of the world. So that's also at the Bill Murray on the last Sunday of getting the plug in here at 5:30. Yeah.
Okay, because now, so you again, you've had the two shows. How do you have the mental capacity to to memorize the two shows, or would you say that they are like are they fairly intertwined, or like how do you basically, yeah, how do you make sure that you remember, or like you can even work on basically 2 hours, every year
Mm.
at least.
Well, the working on it, I love the work and I love the writing. So I do a daily podcast, daily notes. So I do about 3-4 minutes of writing, if kind of in my head, and I make notes. So the writing is always there. I run a gig on a Monday every week where I try and do 5 to 10 minutes of new stuff. So I think if I can get 2 minutes of new stuff a week, that's actually good. You can do two shows a year. 50 times 2 minutes. That's your two shows. So that's how they're written. How they're remembered is a lot of previewing. And as I get older, it's even more difficult, I think, to remember stuff. So it's a lot of previewing. And then it's not a problem, apart from sometimes when you're doing the two together, you get on stage and it's that initial moment where you open your mouth. You just think, what's this show again? What's the opening line? So once you've got the opening line, everything should flow. And they tend to be a little bit different, both shows. So they're not, they have a narrative, they have a story. So you're not going to get them mixed up too much. But as a backup, I'll have notes in my back pocket or on the side where nobody can see, like just brief bullet points.
Yeah.
Because that was after in 2015 at the Brighton Fringe, I was storming the show and then I just totally forgot the whole show. And because they're a narrative, I just stood in front of the audience for probably a minute, which seemed like about 10 years to me and them. And they just didn't forgive me. They didn't forgive me forgetting, because I guess I've broken the facade that for some audience, you forget that the audience thinks you're kind of riffing and stuff and making a lot of it up or whatever. Or I don't know what they think. I don't care. I only care if they're laughing. And even if they're not laughing, I don't care because they're wrong. Yeah. So that stayed in my head as well. 10 years later, I'm like, have those notes in your back pocket just in case.
Wow. Okay. And now we're talking about this year's Fringe. It's August. You're heading there. Even I guess the preparation from the Fringe. Obviously, you've done it for years,
Yeah,
But does it ever again, like when I talk about the preparation, I go from as much as registering, trying to find the venue, trying to find the time slots, to trying to find accommodation. Is
yeah.
this something that has changed much for you, or like something that actually not even for you, but like as a system, like systematically?
The year has checkpoints, so you do the same things at the same points every year. So you're starting to think about next Fringe now, in various respects. Certainly the writing of the shows, but yeah, I mean, I think probably if you're doing a PBH venue, then I think they're out soon in terms of you're booking them up soon, which is crazy. So I guess the only thing that's changed really over the years is the cost of accommodation, which is the extraordinary cost. But you just have to suck that up, I guess. But yeah, I guess what I'm thinking now for next Edinburgh is what am I doing, both in terms of shows and in terms of I might do a play next year as well. But in terms of venues, so I love the Free Festival, but it's wanting to do slightly different things every year, just mentally. It's if you go back to the same venue at the same time, even if they're brilliant, I think is that right for me, or is that a big Groundhog Day where you, yeah, will
I see, I see.
lose the passion for it? But yeah, I've done 16 years on the trot now, so every year since 2010, including 2020 when I was the only act there. So I've done so I've done 16 years. I think it's 16 years. Yeah, yeah, it must be 10 to 2025. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So now it's this year. You've got you're at the Fringe. Um, Obviously, you've done a lot of like previews, and now I think again talking with someone who's taking it like so seriously and is doing all the work a comedian should do, might be slightly different. But then still, did you have which actually yeah? Did you have any stress whatsoever at the beginning? Was it because the venue that you've done it at this year, was it the venue that you've done before? Was it because you talked about changing venues and things like that?
Yeah, I did the same venue last year. So the Counting House is an absolutely incredible venue at the Free Festival. So I know that's going to be great. Um, yeah, it's a funny thing that however much you've done Edinburgh and however much you've previewed the show, there is a slight, as I say, I don't get worried, I don't get stressed, but it's a slight unknown in terms of how the show will work in that room because you haven't done it in that room at that time to these audiences, and particularly on the Free Festival it's you get a beautiful mixture of people, and you get a mixture of people at different days. I think if you're at the Pleasance, I think it's more homogenized in terms of your audience, but you're going to get a few random factors during the run. So that is something that I'm prepared for, but when it happens, you're like, oh, today's the day when it happens. So I think it was 2 days in, I was doing my second show. It's not the end of the world. So you've seen Piracy. It's kind of silly. It's fun. It's funny. It's, as is the other one, obviously. It's funny. It's funny. But it's also a little bit challenging and very emotional. And it challenges the audience. And it's just not as easy. I'm really proud of the show. I think it's an amazing show. It got amazing reviews. So I'm very proud of it. But I'm not surprised that one or two people took a little bit of, I don't know what the word is, didn't take to it easily, but just one or two people. But all it takes is one or two people. So what happened was this on about day 2 or day 3, I had to chuck someone out for being, so it's probably the weekend, the first weekend. I chucked someone out within about a minute. And then realized he was in a group of about 6 people. So it was this kind of sick, I was about to say older guy, but he's only barely older than me, about a 55, 60-year-old guy. And he was just clearly too drunk. So I bantered with him for about a minute and I thought, oh, you're going to be difficult. And then he went, oh, I'm off to get a beer. And I thought, well, you may as well stay out, man. You may as well stay out. You're leaving the show after a minute. That's a clear sign that you're going to be disruptive. So just go and have a drink, man. Not realizing he was with 5 people. So he left, and the other 5 were like, "What the fuck, man?" And I said to them, "Well, do you want to go with him?" And they said, "Oh no." we'll leave him. And I thought, well, they're on my side. But no, the reason that they were staying, they were angry. So not that they were particularly disruptive, but after the show, him and the other five people tracked me down. I say that as if you need to be Poirot. Tracked me down online and were incredibly threatening to me. Um, offering me, just saying, be careful, basically. Round two is coming soon and all this kind of thing. So as I was in my room, in my student accommodation that I'd paid £24,000 a day for, and I had these threats coming through on day 2 or 3, I was thinking, yeah, this is the moment. This is the moment of the Fringe that you prepare for as a more experienced person. And you kind of know it's coming, but it comes in a different way every time. 1 or 2 moments like this will happen. Hopefully it's only 1 or 2. Will happen every festival. And you just think, okay, breathe. This will pass. But that's when it's hard. And if moments like that happen more often, that's when it's hard for people. And I know it happens to some acts because some acts are very challenging and get, it's just the way it is. You mention a certain subject and you get anger in comedy,
Yeah.
So, I mentioned reform during the show, and it wasn't that made them angry. It was more the fact that I chucked I think it was their dad or something. And unfortunately, the son was chipping in during the show in like a really unfunny way. So I couldn't help but say to him, "Oh, clearly it's genetics. You're both, the funny gene has been passed down." So that probably angered him as well. But there's certain subjects that will anger people in comedy, and it's funny if I mention reform, like I mentioned reform on an Instagram post recently. And obviously, with the news how it is at the moment, you just get people piling in, going, I don't even want to repeat, but just like, semi-threatening or kind of abusive stuff that I just delete or ignore. So it's water off a duck's back, but it's you got to look out for it when it's. You got to be prepared for it more.
Would
Know it's coming. Unless you're in that very homogenized, Pleasance, maybe Space. I say Pleasance, or any of these where you got to pay 15 quid to get in. You're less likely to get those kind of people who are wanting to miss the show after 1 minute and leave because they've invested it more up front. Only happens occasionally, thank goodness.
I see, but then with stuff like this, because you were talking about how you don't worry, which I find fascinating. Someone who worries, like I think I started worrying now. About
Don't worry about work. I think again, it's having kids. Or I went through a health thing a couple of years ago when I was very worried about a cancer scare that I had. So it's when I don't know, having kids I think helps to a certain extent because it's like you constantly got that going on. So it's like, am I really that worried? But sorry to interrupt. Yeah.
no, that's okay, because I was gonna say I do find it fascinating, and then I see. I see your point in the respects of like and I think I spoke with someone else who who was actually a cancer survivor, and they were saying that when comedy stuff happens, like say they don't get booked for a gig or things like that, they're like, oh, I've had worse things happening to me, like that's not gonna stop me. So I respect that a lot, and I find it very I find it quite healthy, to be fair. But my question was now based on what you were saying with you would expect, because I thought with the Fringe you'd expect people to kind of like know that they're signing up for comedy, when you're in a city that's like has an entire month of obviously there are other like types of I think like arts that are at the Fringe, but you kind of know what you sign up for. It's almost like it's a difference going to a gig, because the pub that you're in now has a room upstairs and they're doing comedy.
Yeah, but it's kind of similar to that, but it only happens a couple of times during the Fringe. So, as I say, if you're paying to get into one of these shows and you're paying 10 to 15 or £20 to get into one of these shows, of course, you know what's going to happen. You've invested a little bit and you've made that decision, if only last minute at the box office, and you've asked the question, what's going on at the moment? This is comedy. Some people do wander into these venues from the pub and they're just going, what's going on at the moment? Piracy? What's that? It's about, I assume it's about pirates. Is it musical? I'm coming in or whatever. You know what I mean? So they do make decisions because they don't have to pay to get in. As I say, it does only happen a few times. Otherwise, I wouldn't do, I wouldn't do the Edinburgh Fringe at all. It would be a nightmare if they constantly came in and wondered what it was. Mostly they know what it was, but it's those people that don't that sometimes you get a, or they just come in and they just haven't done the barest. If I'm going to, like it's crazy to me that people will go and see a comedy show without just checking them out briefly on Instagram, or because it's so easy to check out the style now. You've got all this choice in Edinburgh. Why you would make that last minute decision? Just it only takes you 2 minutes. Have a look at a clip. They're a minute long on Instagram. Oh yeah, he seems funny. Let's go and watch it. And
Yeah.
it's crazy that some people will walk into a show and go, "Oh no, I didn't like it because of the use of the swear words and stuff." I'm just like, do the research. That's not on me.
But and even with things as such now, you obviously this thing is happening, and he the because I think I'm even talking on like how does it feel in any circumstance that you talked about how sometimes you say you alienate one person in the room, because of like sometimes over literally silly things, because it's a comedy show, you're not
Yeah.
uh, putting the world in order. um how do you manage to keep your composure, with in the respect of like everybody else that's there? Because it's almost like if you say something conflictual is happening,
Yeah.
some people would end up kind of changing their demeanor for the rest of the show.
Yeah, well, in that instant, or in any instant, you've got to play to the whole crowd. So you've got to try and get the whole crowd on side. So it's what to do at any moment. So in that example, I'm not so worried about his son that the guy that I've chucked out. I'm obviously worried about the whole crowd. So I asked the crowd, now we can get on with the show, and I was just checking in with them. I said to them something like, "Can I just check? Are you on my side for chucking him out?" And they seemed to be like, only if who's I said, "Who's on my side for chucking me out?" And it was only a couple of people. And I wanted to make a joke of that. I'm just like, guys, with him in here, we wouldn't be able to do the show. And like, so you're checking in with them, trying to pull them onto your side. And sometimes it's difficult because six people can swing the balance of a room because they weren't on my side. So sometimes you have to write it off in terms of being a storming show. You have to do your best in terms of making it a good show. So it was a good show in the end, but it wasn't a storming show because I didn't have everyone. I was never going to get those six guys. If I'd got those, I'd be which I am, the best comedian in the world. Um, so it's, I think a good show is a good show. A good show is a win. It can't always be a storming show with everyone. So sometimes one of those things does upset the balance. But it doesn't really. I see people in Edinburgh all the time going, "Oh, I had a terrible show. This happened. Terrible, terrible, terrible time." And they'd been there for years. I'm just like, this happens every year. You had a terrible show because somebody said something, or that's not a terrible show. A terrible show is one that you haven't written properly and you haven't previewed properly and isn't good. And this is the number one thing I'll say to people when I'm working with them in terms of the Edinburgh Fringe, particularly the Edinburgh Fringe, where you have to do the show every day. If you've previewed it and you don't think it's great, you're in trouble. You have to believe your show is amazing. Great. If you think it's just good and you could have done better, you're in trouble. You'll get through it, but it could be a struggle at points because when these people shout out or leave and say you're shit because you've chucked them out, you just think, is it the show? Is it them or is it the show? If you believe the show is great, like I try and do now, with my experience, I try and preview it enough. And often in February, that's where Piracy was a rare event where it came together in March, because often I'll preview it in Leicester and I'll just go, I need to bin like 50% of that show and keep 10%. So then it's ready for August. If you haven't previewed enough or you just think it's okay or good, like has happened to me before at the Edinburgh Fringe, where I've just turned up with a show and I've thought, this is pretty good. But, now it has to be amazing to get you through psychologically, I think. That's a number one tip, really. Which is sounds easy. Believe your show is amazing, but it's like if it's not amazing, you need to do more work on it. So it is, you know.
Well, actually, I was going to ask because my question was going to be, how do you, how can you put a label of like, oh, this is amazing on a show without, say like being like factually accurate? Because I'm thinking in the respects of, I think when I write something, or like when I hear like the story from other people, it's kind of like it's never good enough. You always try to go better and better and better. So then, how do you strike the balance basically between being realistic and basically, yeah, like not being too harsh on yourself? So, and also not allowing yourself to, like you said, go with a weak show and have an awful time because of that.
Yeah, well, the beauty of comedy more than theatre or any other art form is you can tell when it's very, very good. And all it takes is to perform it 5, 10, 15 times, that bit of material. And you can look at the crowd, how they laugh, look at different crowds, how they laugh and how they get that. And you think that is an amazing bit. And then you build up those bits and you have a show where you do the show the first time and somebody says that's the best show I've ever seen. That's the kind of compliment you're looking for when you're looking for an amazing bit. So I'm never hard on myself. You just know. I guess it's the opposite. Don't be delusional and think because you're getting kind of laughs that it's okay. You got to be getting big laughs, and if not applause breaks, then people on the brink of applause breaks. And so, yeah, sometimes it doesn't happen. It's sometimes a particular bit, like a 1 minute section of the show. You think, it's a segue to that. It's a bridge, and this isn't an amazing bit. But if it's an amazing show, then great. And if you can build that up in gigs from amazing bits that work in clubs in front of 100 people, you're in business, really. So it's being it's being hard on yourself in terms of don't be delusional. Yeah, don't think that a smattering of laughter is enough. You need big laughs all the time.
I see. Okay, and now we're back at the Edinburgh. Um, like you said, you had some would say a great start. Being threatened to, uh, in within the first weekend in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
What now? Obviously, there is you have the I guess even like the stress of like being away from home. You're in a new city. You've got to also make sure that you're selling well. So like, were you flying for yourself, or did you have someone else fly for you? What's your relationship with that?
Yeah, I don't fly for myself very much, apart from on the first day or two. Yeah, it's really important to get an amazing flyer. Try and get those numbers in the first 3, 4, 5 days. Then you think if I've got an amazing show, then it can get word of mouth from that. So that's what I hope happens.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I forget the question. I'm
No, so obviously, I think I kind of like stopped halfway through because I was just curious of how do you, yeah, whether you've done the flyering for yourself, just to see like how do you try and keep like basically make the show now produce money and make you feel like, oh, I've not spent my my life savings, although
Well, yeah,
I've
the nature of podcasts is you're talking about yourself. So it's kind of, but there will be other people listening that'll be interested in from their perspective. So from my perspective, it's easy to say because I've been doing it 16 years. I've got an audience that comes back. I have the experience to have that. Hopefully, have the great shows that can get word of mouth. But then there's the opposite side of the scale with Edinburgh, which is people do have an incredibly tough time because they're in venues that are at the wrong time or the wrong place for them. And that's anywhere from the free through all the paid venues, you've paid so much money for a venue, and there's all stories all the time of I'm playing to two people and I'm paying
Yeah,
10 to 15 to 20,000 pounds to be here. That's the stress I've never really had. Maybe once I had that in a
I
paid
see.
venue where I
Okay.
wasn't selling less. So there's all these stresses that I don't have now, because after 16 years, you should have worked out a way to do it. And if you haven't, you're probably insane. So yeah, it's Edinburgh is very hard. It's very hard mentally. I see people struggling all the time. You're constantly being judged. You're being judged by audiences. You're being judged by your peers. You're being judged by critics. You have these, you have these threats. If not somebody actually threatening you to a fight, you have other threats going on. You have an incredible amount of money being spent, and then you're trying to deliver something that's deep inside you, your art. And if that isn't coming out in the way you want, it's depressing. And no wonder people struggle. And people have talked for years about more help being needed at the Edinburgh Fringe, but it's artists don't really want the help. I think podcasts like this or other podcasts like this are good in terms of guidance. And
Mhm.
as I was saying to just a mate earlier, people know I've done the Fringe for 16 years. I'm just like, ask me a question, ask me or anyone else that's done the Fringe for 16 years. We've made all the mistakes and we've had all the successes in the same Fringe. So just ask us, and hopefully you'll avoid some of the pitfalls, because there are very obvious pitfalls that people make. And I'm just like, if only you'd ask the question. But you have to ask those questions before you book. So ask those questions now before January if you're thinking of booking to do the Edinburgh Fringe. Get some advice. And if you want to plunge in, even when you've taken that advice, and that's on you, but at least you've taken the advice.
I guess yeah, that's such a good point because at least you know, you have, like you said, you have someone giving their side based on the experience which you don't have.
That's it. And it's only my opinion, but it's an opinion based on experience. So, it's like, I don't know about you, but if somebody comments on your material, for me, I want them to be more experienced than me. It's like, in terms of if I'm really going to take it on board, like if Bill Burr says to me, that bit, have you thought about doing that? I'm like, yeah, Bill, tell me more. If like you've been going a week and you go, that bit, Nathan, I'm like, yeah, kind of, yeah, interesting, but also shut the fuck up.
I mean, I always the way I thought about it is that, I always listen,
Oh yeah, you
but
always listen, of
like,
course.
but I will take on board only whatever like feels like it can actually help me and it's actually valuable. Like I like you said, I I can listen to someone and I'd like to think that I'm never, or like not never, but I try to be the least defensive at all times and just like, okay, like I'm taking this on board, but whether I'm going to act on it or not, I think only time will tell, because we'll see how much value do I actually take from what I heard. So
Oh
that's
yeah.
one.
And that's absolutely fair enough. And as I say, the beauty of comedy, and it's why I always go back to it rather than theatre, which is where I started, is that you don't need people telling you. You don't need peers telling you what's good and what's not. The audience will tell you every day.
Well, now two things actually I wanted to pick up on that you said. One was about the returning audiences,
Hmm.
and I'm actually quite curious, like from your perspective, what's it like when you see people that you've seen in previous years come to see your new shows, or like again, even if it like if you do have the like if you do remember the people and you're like, oh my god, I've seen you before, how do you feel when that happens?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's great. It's obviously that's why you're doing it. I was trying to think of something more interesting to say there, apart from it's great, and that's absolutely why you do it. And that's what they say about live comedy, that if you have a few thousand people that are going to come to your shows, or 1,000 people in every town that are going to come to your shows, that's all you need. You don't need millions of viewers on TV anymore. You just need 1,000 people in every city, and you've got a career or whatever. Not even that much, probably. Um, so yeah, it feels great. I'm trying to think of something more interesting to say, because there is something about, you see that returning face and they've loved a particular show. So people will often go back to well, a particular show, and then they'll mention on the way out, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I've seen you every year since like observational or something," and you'd
Yeah.
be like, and you kind of want to ask them, what do you, was it as good as that? Are you kind of, but it's the fact that they're there and back there is all you need to know. And I've started this. Well, I haven't even started it yet. I've looked into this like Instagram broadcast channel. I don't know whether you do that or have thought about doing that. So more a close relationship or like behind the scenes. So as I say, I'm doing one or two things this year that I think will be interesting, and I think a closer relationship with you know fans or people that like your work. I think will be a fun thing to have to because I'm always interested in their. I'm always trying to talk to them as they're going out as well. It's like, oh, I love you. I come to see you every year. I'm like, what do you do? And often you just get a really interesting story in half a minute or a minute, and you just think, oh, it's these kind of ships in the night. I never
Yeah.
talk to. I hardly see my friends up in Edinburgh, let alone people that just come and see me. But I am incredibly interested by everyone, even if it's just like half a minute or a minute story. Someone will say something so interesting, you'd be like, "Oh my god, and I'm never going to see you again." Bye. But you're so interesting and such a seemingly great person. But bye forever.
I mean, but this is again like I guess that's one of the things in life, because I think sometimes when I bump into like like random people, and you're like, I could be I wish you were my best friend now, I wish we were together forever, and like you said, possibly we're not going to see each other again.
Yeah, it happens. And on the way out, someone will say something to me, and I go, "Follow me on Instagram. I'll follow you back." And it's like, I do mean that. I do mean I'll follow you back. And I haven't got time to stay in touch with everybody. And don't pass me constant messages, obviously. But it's like, stay in touch. That's what a comedian needs to do: build relationships with an audience and care about them. And it's what some of the kind of bigger name acts who kind of play arenas do. They have the same people coming back, I think, to the front rows, and they go, "Oh yeah, I remember you from," and that's such a great thing. It's totally a two-way process. Comedy, you often get on the way out of shows, you just go on an amazing night or whatever. I'm talking,
Yeah.
not necessarily my own shows, but and mixed bill shows as well. But it's about you. It's about the audience as well, turning up. And as we going back to that thing, being invested to a certain extent, where you're turning up ready to laugh. It's comedy. It's a particular type of comedy, and you're there to laugh. It's so important that you're there as well, because without you, it's not great.
I mean, you've told me one of the I think one of the most like wonderful, or I gave me one of the most wonderful pieces, yeah, one of the most wonderful piece of advice that I take to heart now every time I do a comedy gig, which was about if I don't even know if you remember now, I'm that guy who's gonna be like, hey, do you remember when I was saying like, how do you go into a room and you're like, oh, the material is not working, and then you were saying that, look, you play for the audience, like whatever the audience. It's almost like you do, as the audience, whatever you feel like the audience wants to hear, because ultimately you're playing to an audience.
Yeah,
And
yeah, absolutely, yeah, and that's yeah, that happens in Edinburgh. So, however much you previewed it, there's a beautiful thing about doing a month in Edinburgh where you're trying to find the show in Edinburgh. So you've previewed it and it's working, and then in that room at that time, you're playing around with it and just think, what does this audience want me to do with these bits? And it's just subtle changes. You go in harder or you go in softer, and you're kind of doing it more for them. And as you say, you're always playing to the audience. Your job as a comedian is to make the whole audience laugh. But then a beautiful thing happens halfway through, when you're so comfortable with the material, you know exactly what works the best. You're then telling them what they are going to enjoy, and they do enjoy it. And it happens for me like halfway through every Fringe now. Like, it's going to fly now, the show, and everyone's going to love it, and there's no exceptions. And there might be exceptions, and they don't tell me, but it's seemingly that way. And so, yeah, maybe these random things happen towards the start of the Fringe when you're maybe not quite sure of what you're doing so much, even if you previewed the show a lot?
Well, this is what I was going to say because I'm actually quite curious on your perspective because obviously you've done the Edinburgh for, like I said, 16 years. You've done even like multiple shows before, but there must still, or like again, I think there must still be um, this idea of like, oh, I'm not sure, what's going to happen, or like, oh, I need to. It's almost like, I need to set base for, say, like a week at least, or at least a few days, and regardless of all the preparation. S-
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as I say, it is that first week where you're bedding in the show. But then, as I say, it happens hopefully more quickly. But it usually, even if you preview it a lot, it takes you a week to truly be comfortable with the show in that room at that time to those audiences, and then it's a beautiful moment. And there's a few bits without giving too much away, because please come and see. It's not the end of the world at the Bill Murray on the 28th at 5:30. But there's the way I say it at the start, and I say it in the publicity, so it's not giving too much away. But it's like there's no sad bits in this show. It's an absolute riot, which it is. It's a riot of a comedy show. It's belly laugh funny all the way through. But then in the last minute, it will be devastatingly sad. This is what I tell the audience at the start of the show, and it is devastatingly sad. I will cry, and the audience often cries. Um, but you can only get into that beautiful place. Well, it's a tragic place, it's a horrible place, but it's a beautiful place artistically if you are truly comfortable with the show. And so when I found myself getting into that place, after those first few days, it's a beautiful place to get into. And you just hope that, I guess you talk about the stress and worry and these random factors in the Fringe. What you hope is reviews are still important. They're important psychologically. They're an important memory of the Fringe. So it's nice that when somebody comes along, I do want reviewers along in the first few days, but if they come after those first couple of days, hopefully you found the show to such an extent that you can truly put over the emotion of the show. So I had Kate Copstick from The Scotsman in probably after about a week, and I had the emotion there. That is hard to find when you've got a kind of major critic in the crowd, because there's an extra level of pressure sometimes, but not for me. I'm, having done it so long. But even so, when you're trying to find those real emotional depths, and I'm very proud that Kate saw it that day, and Copstick, I should say, Copstick saw it that day, as she likes to be referred as, and said few have been. I think the quote was, "Few have been as deeply affecting as Cassidy."
nice.
Um, and yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful to find those things artistically, and I guess coming back to kind of what keeps me going and what makes me work hard, I'm like, where's the next depth that I can plunge, or the next height, or the next challenge I can give to myself? So this show is not the end of the world. Piracy wasn't. It was a challenge because I was playing the piano, but this show is challenge in terms of where can I explore inside myself. And my idea for next year's show that I've already got, because I try and have the idea for the new shows in about April. So I've already started to form, and it's
Wow.
really, again, it's really challenging. Yeah. Yeah, I can't say too much, but it's going to challenge me in a different way for sure. Not emotionally, but in other ways.
Okay, well, now because I'm conscious of time, I'm going to ask you. I want to ask you two more things, and then we're good. Um, what I was going to ask you is about the critics side of it, because you're talking about how you had again a huge, very like reputable critic in, but in those cases, like, what does it feel like when, like, do you know beforehand, like, do you see the critic, or like do you kind of like know them already by now, or what they look like, so you can have a look at the audience and know they're there? Is it a total surprise? How does it work?
Well, in a paid venue, you can choose to know who's in or not because they'll book in advance. So some comedians like to know who's in, some don't. At the free, you tend to get them wandering in sometimes randomly. So Copstick just walked in, but you're always pleased to see them. I did a big piece of work before the Fringe. Don't know whether you saw that in terms of encouraging
Yes.
reviewers to the Fringe. So that really paid huge benefits. One full review was kind of at the forefront of that, but others followed, and Copstick has always been so on the free festival particularly, you're always pleased to see them. But one full review did give you advance notice, which I think is always nice if you get a little bit of advance notice, so you're not surprised when you see them, because it does sometimes, particularly if you've had less experience, I think it might throw you a little bit because you've got this one chance, and maybe you've only got one review of the whole festival, so it puts an extra pressure on it. Often at the free festival, this is what I'm trying to change. You have only got one chance, and this will be. It's not like it's seen by everybody, but it's your memory that's written
Yeah.
down. It is important. Um, what one full review did this year, which I loved, and I would hope other audiences, other critics do, which we do at the Ish Awards as well. When I talk to the Ish Awards at the start of the Fringe, I say um, it's either you and or the audience who are laughing more than you've heard laughing at any other show. That's when you know it's the funniest show of the Fringe. Are you and or the audience? I.e., if you don't think it's brilliant, but the audience are belly laughing, you should consider long listing it. If you think it's great, then listen to the audience as well. Just to double check that it's just not you and everyone else thinks it's rubbish, and it's just like no. Which I guess would rarely happen. It's more the other way around that this isn't for me, but the audience are belly laughing, so I should consider this. And this is what One Full Review did on my shows. It's not the end of the world. Again, there was a lot of people in from abroad, and I tried to make it. And I do make these shows. I explain the references, but when you kind of have to explain the references a bit too much, it kind of affects the flow sometimes. And there's only a few references I had to explain at the start, but even so, they picked up on that and they said, "Oh, you had to explain some of the references." So I'd like to see this in front of a crowd where he didn't have to do that and stuff. But still, amazing show, amazing written, amazing delivered. 4.5 stars, I think they gave me. So it's like it's critics that are kind of be fair and be kind as a critic. And I think Martin from On the Mic was saying he wasn't printing any reviews under 3 stars. And he just said to me, because there's no point. And I'm like, yeah, there is no point, because you just upset the act. All it is a bit of gossip on the Fringe that people have seen a terrible review. It helps nobody. It's not like if you print a 3 star review and it's yeah. Anyway, that's just my personal opinion. But I'm glad I think reviewing is changing to a certain extent. I think people are being a little bit kinder, and even if they're not being paid to review it. But that's another story we won't get into here.
But you see, and this is the thing, is like you're talking about the legacy at the beginning and the idea, the fear of death and wanting to leave something behind, and what you've done with the Ish, besides of what you've done with the comedy, with your own comedy, but what you've done with the Ish as well is kind of like, it's a stepping stone of that as well.
Well, yeah, this is another top tip that I would give to acts, and this is coming to my mind after doing the Ish. And believe me, I wasn't like this as a younger comedian. So I think always talk to older comedians that have been through it, and they will give you some sage advice, hopefully. And I think this is really important. It's do something for others during the Fringe, and do something for others generally. It really helps you. It really helps you get through it, because as I say, if you have that bad moment of someone threatening you, it's only one thing in your day, even if you're doing another show. But you're also, on top of that, I'm doing the Ish Awards, which is helping hundreds of artists, giving them hope, nominating them. But you don't have to obviously do something as big as that. Just fly it for someone else for 10 minutes. Care about somebody else's show. And as soon as you care about somebody else's show, your own show becomes so much easier, you know? Ask someone how they are and care about others, and your own show will just lift. And all those things that are difficulties will melt away to a certain extent because it's just one of the things in your day and you're putting a lot of good out there, you know? And that makes me sound like a saint. I'm not. I'm a CUNT. Um, but I, but I'm neither of those things. But I didn't used to be like this, and it's a big regret of mine of when I was a comedian, a younger comedian that only cared about myself and the small group of people around me. And this is what people talk about cliques and whatever. It's just like it's not good ultimately. Try and care about as many people as possible and do things for other people and do it in a selfish way because it makes your own shit lighter.
That's beautiful. That's a nice analogy. Well, look, Nathan, I'm cautious we went a little bit over time, so I appreciate you so much for
Oh no,
doing.
you know, I once I get talking about myself, Levy, you know what I mean? I could do that all day and how great I am and how I'm a saint and how I help other people. But it's all shades of grey. But you just hope year on year you improve as a comedian, but more importantly, you improve as a person. And yeah, I hope I'm doing that. And you know, and yeah, and just on that note, just to finish, you know, you mentioned the Ish Awards, and hopefully people will listen to this. The amazing thing that happened out of this year was, and this is it. I did a film called I Am Oric, which is you can still get on YouTube, which I'm really very proud of as well. So this is when things started to change for me in terms of like you be generous to other people will be generous to you. As soon as you start doing this, as soon as you start caring for other people and encouraging artists to support artists, amazing things will happen. So Elf Lyons, Patrick Monahan, Rod Gilbert, you know, supported the Ish Awards with £500, and then James Corden came on with £10,000, and we've got a groundswell now of people thinking this is an amazing thing to do, support artists, and hopefully artists will listen to this and will want to support next year with their time as being a judge, or if you're a rich and famous comedian listening to this podcast with your money to support other artists. It's a great thing. I said to someone the other day, I said, I'm happy. And I never usually say that I'm happy because I'm constantly striving, constantly working for the next thing. But I'm so happy right now. I'm happy personally and I'm happy with my art. And a lot of that has come from the Edinburgh Fringe and the Ish Awards in terms of helping other people. It makes me happy. And just coming back to dying, it's like I fear dying now more than ever right now because I'm happy. And I hope just before I die, I'm really unhappy because it will make I'm unhappy. Radu Isaac has got a brilliant bit about how you are just before death. Have you heard that bit? It's an amazing. I've gigged with Radu a few times recently. Incredible comedian, and yeah. So I'm like, apparently happiness is a bell curve, and you're very happy in your final years of your life. And I'm just like, I don't want that. I want to be, I want to be really unhappy and think, I can die now. But yeah, let's end on a happy note. I'm really, really happy, and I'm happy to be talking to you again, Levy. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you for doing this. Um, we'll get your details on the description of the episode. Uh, I guess we'll do the plug-in again with you though. So the show 28th of September at
Uh,
5:30.
yeah, I think that's Sunday the 28th, right? Sunday the 28th of September at 5, yeah, at 5:30 p.m.
And
So the Bill Murray at the N1 London. So yeah, book your tickets now. It's Not the End of the World, and just go to nathancassidy.com for everything.
perfect. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, man. Lots of love.
Lots of love. Bye bye.
Okay, well, this is it. This was the episode. I hope it was what you expected for. At least what you expected for, if not better. Um, I feel like there was something else I wanted to tell you that I thought about as I was, like putting this together, but I can't remember what it was. Anyway, Um, yeah. Anyway, you know the drill. Until next week, from me, Pickle and Sarma. Stay skillful. Goodbye.